And welcome to the One Life Church devotional series as we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Now, today we start a new book, one of the most misunderstood and certainly circumnavigated books in the entire Bible. That is the book of Job. 42 chapters set pretty much like this. There's a prologue, a couple of chapters, which have got scenes in heaven, scenes on earth. And then there's a monologue by this guy called Job, followed by three sequences of dialogues with his friends, then a couple more monologues, three more monologues, then two speeches by God, and then it ends with an epilogue. So that's 42 chapters, prologue, epilogue, with these monologues and dialogues and answer from God. That's basically what we're going to be dealing with over the next little while. Now, we're not too certain who the author was, although he seems to have been an Israelite. Some people don't even think that Job was an Israelite. I happen to think that he was. And then the setting is in this land called Uz, which hasn't even got very clear parameters to it. So some people say it was miles from Israel. I don't think so. I think because the Sabians and the Chaldeans raided Job. And so they've got to be in proximity of the Sabians and Chaldeans. And in addition to that, it says he's the greatest in the east. So I think southeast of Israel, probably where the setting takes place, about 500 years BC. Let's get straight into it. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and he shunned evil. Now, this is even God's recommendation of Job. God says of Job, there's no one on earth like him. Doesn't mean he's perfect, but means he's God-fearing. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters, and these guys misbehaved. And what his custom was is every morning when he knew his kids had been having a party, he would make sacrifices and say, Lord, please forgive them. Don't hold it against them. So you see this scene on earth, and then suddenly you transported in verse 6 to heaven, where angels are parading themselves before God, having a discussion with God. It's like a courtroom in heaven. And Satan pitches up. And God says, what you been up to? He says, I've been looking across the earth. He says, have you considered my servant Job? Now, it's a pretty scary thought that God would talk to the architect of evil about you or me. Anyway, Satan says to God, the only reason that guy follows you is because you bless him. If you stop blessing him, he won't follow you. He'll curse you. So God said, okay, go see. But you do not touch him. Interestingly, his stuff, even his kids get touched, but his wife doesn't get touched. Why? Because God sees wife as part of him as part of wife. So you're one with your spouse. Anyway, so God allows this testing to take place. And, you've got to ask yourself the question, why? Why does God do that? Well, that answer actually isn't given in this book. If you look at the rest of the Bible, though, God has created the world and evil through Satan has entered it. God does not want to just, insist on and create compliance. That would be like turning us into compulsive robots. No, he wants his creation, who made in his image, to follow him and to love him freely and to make a different choice to that the devil made. And so he allows us to coexist with evil, willing us, calling us, giving us grace to turn our back on evil. Anyway, the scene on earth is that his donkeys, his camels, his kids, everything gets wiped out. And this is Job's response. Job got up and he tore his robe and he shaved his head. And then he fell to the ground in worship. Imagine that, losing your family and all your stuff, and you naked. Is what he says, naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I will depart. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Imagine praising God through a situation like that. Incredible man. Anyway, we're back in heaven. The devil says, it's because you didn't let me touch him. Let me touch him. So God says, okay, you can touch his skin. And so now he gets boils all over him, so much so that when his wife looks at him, she's repulsed. And she says, curse God and die. She says, I don't even want to be married to a guy like you. His friends arrive. They look at him and they start weeping. He must have been. Have you ever had a boil? It must have been shocking. Anyway, they sit in silence. And even in this, Job doesn't curse God. This sets us up for the rest of the book. And, as we read this book, we've got to say, Lord, what about our suffering? I would certainly say that. Not all of our suffering comes from the devil. We don't all have conversations, had before the devil and God about us. The devil is not omnipresent. He is a being, but he's not omnipresent. And he's only one place at a time. He has his minions, but he's only one place at a time. So much of our suffering is just because we've been stupid. Some of our suffering is because we live in a fallen world and it's just a really hard place. But one thing we can be sure is God is allowing it because he's holding us and he's watching our response. This is a hugely challenging book. See you tomorrow.